Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today for the Tax Credit and Capacity Building Program Overview webinar. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time for joining us this morning. Before we dive into the presentation, I just wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items. We anticipate that today's workshop will run from now until about 11:30 a.m., and that accounts for also pausing throughout to answer your questions. So if you do have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box and drop them in there. We will be taking the time to answer those throughout today's presentation. We are also recording today's webinar and we'll be following up with that recording as well as today's slides and other relevant materials in the coming days. So you'll have access to all of this information in the future. This morning, we're focused on providing you an overview of who CDFA is, in case you're not familiar. We'll talk about how the tax credit works, and then we'll dive into information on the tax credit and capacity building programs, including eligible applicants, program objectives and guidelines, funding priorities, and key dates to keep in mind as you work through the application process. Before we get underway, we'd love for you to take a moment in the chat to share your name and the organization that you're here representing today. And if you'd like to share just a couple words about the project that you're looking to advance or why you're interested in the tax credit or capacity building program. We're also going to do a brief round of introductions to the CDFA team. So these are folks that you will be interacting with throughout the application process, and then if you're awarded during the implementation phase of your project. So I'm going to ask for CDFA team to come off video and off mute and introduce themselves, starting with Betsy.
Hey everybody, I'm Betsy McNamara. I'm principal with Full Circle Consulting, and I've been contracted by CDFA to work with them for the second year now on overseeing the tax credit program. And so I will, in many cases, be your first line of contact for questions.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Maureen Quinn, and I am the Tax Credit Program Manager at CDFA, and I typically work with projects from application process through the closeout of a tax credit award.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Molly Donovan, Director of Economic Development, and I'm also directing the Capacity Building Program.
Good morning. I'm Scott Mislansky. I'm the Director of Clean Energy Finance, and I manage the energy policy requirement for the tax credit program. I'm also one of the reviewers for your tax credit program applications.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Community Development Manager here, and I work with Molly on the Tax Credit Capacity Building Program and work closely with the capacity building grantees to better understand their needs and support their ongoing relationship with CDFA.
Good morning.
Let's hear from you. Great.
Good morning. My name is Melanie Steenbeck. I'm CDFA's contract manager, and I'm the person that you will be interacting with when you are registering for CDFA's grant management system.
Hello, and I'm Nate Olson. I support the CDFA with their grants management system. So if you ever run into technical issues with our system at any point during your application or grant phase, you might interact with me.
Great. Thanks so much, team. And again, welcome to everyone. If you're just joining us, if you could take a moment to share your name and organization in the chat and a few words about why you're joining us today, whether it's about a project or you're just interested in learning more about CDFA's tax credit program or capacity building program. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to CDFA's Executive Director, Katie Easterly Marte, who's going to give you an overview of the Community Development Finance Authority.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and glad that everyone had the opportunity to meet our team, and welcome to the webinar. We're so glad that you're joining us this morning. I'm Katie Easterly Marte, the Executive Director of the Community Development Finance Authority. I'm pleased to provide you an overview of CDFA and its programs. The Community Development Finance Authority is a statewide community and economic development entity, and we serve all of New Hampshire. We are state chartered, independent, we're a nonprofit, and we're like other state authorities like the New Hampshire Housing or the Business Finance Authority. Our board is appointed by the governor. In state fiscal year 2025, CDFA had the opportunity to make 69 targeted investments in community-based projects. These totaled over $16 million of investments, and they were community development, economic development, and clean energy initiatives across New Hampshire. These investments supported nonprofits, municipalities, small businesses in delivering essential services, creating jobs, developing affordable housing. We increased access to childcare, enhanced energy efficiency, and strengthened local economies. CDFA's projects had measurable outcomes this year, including serving more than 40,000 individuals, creating 185 housing units, supporting 342 small businesses, 54 jobs that were created or retained based on the financing, and nearly 100,000 square feet of space was renovated. Business donors remain steadfast in their commitment to these important community economic development projects, with 160 unique business donors engaged in these projects last year. CDFA's impact is seen in revitalized neighborhoods, downtown, and community spaces, addressing affordable housing and infrastructure needs, and empowering small businesses to increase access to economic opportunity. Today, we're focusing on CDFA's tax credit programs, but we have a full suite of grant and loan opportunities to support community economic development projects. As you work with us and advance your project, you may find them helpful, and we're happy to orient you to these various resources throughout your engagement with CDFA. I want to talk a little bit about CDFA's priorities, particularly as they relate to our core programs, the tax credit programs. First, a key priority is building capacity. We have the Capacity Building Program, which is a subset of the tax credit program, and provides resources to strengthen nonprofits in building their capacity to advance community economic development projects. These support the needs of vulnerable community members. CDFA seeks to support its partners in your ability to achieve your mission and to meet the needs in your community by making strategic capacity building investments at critical junctures in organizations' history. One example of this work is Positive Street Art, based in Nashua. They create art throughout the state. Positive Street Art sought funding to build staff capacity so they could sustain offering new programs and partnerships and allow the executive director to delegate day-to-day operations to other staff members. That allowed her to focus on fundraising, external relations, and build new programs. Another critical part of our priorities at CDFA, and something that we're able to support through the tax credit program, is our investments in community facilities. This is a picture of the Mark Stebbins Community Center, which is being built on the west side of Manchester. For more than 35 years, people who lived and worked in the west side of Manchester spoke about the needs for a community center, and this one will meet just that. It combines health services with after-school care and family resources to provide a hub of community services on the west side. Services will include before and after school care, health care, food access initiatives, and a community navigator program. This project is anchored by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Manchester and Amoskeag Health, and CDFA made a tax credit investment last year into this critical community facility. Another critical area of our investment is investing in affordable housing. Increasing access to quality, affordable housing is such a priority. NeighborWorks Southern New Hampshire was awarded $625,000 of tax credits in June 2020 to invest in this incredible project, which is an infill project in downtown Nashua. The fund supported the creation of 45 mixed income units, and this is at 249 Main Street. It brought much needed quality, affordable housing and also really revitalized this block in downtown Nashua. This is part of the Tree Street neighborhoods in Nashua and is an incredible asset connected to ground transportation, services, after different programs. It's 6 stories, and the design of this building aligned with Nashua's new building code. So it's a very exciting development. It built on the exciting and positive transformation happening in downtown Nashua, and it enables residents to rent an affordable apartment with walking distance to those amenities. We also prioritize the revitalization of downtowns. A set of investment in a place like here in Franklin can have a significant impact on communities, revitalizing their downtowns and village centers. In Franklin, CDFA invested in a number of different projects, starting with facade improvements, then investing in an affordable housing project just adjacent to downtown, some energy efficiency improvements on the municipal side. We invested in nonprofit capacity to advance many of these projects, and most recently in the Franklin Opera House in downtown Franklin. The Franklin Opera House looks to revitalize the downtown in partnership with the city of Franklin and knew that an investment in engaging in their community through the capacity building program was really critical to being sure that project would be successful. All of these investments in Franklin are attracting new businesses, additional private housing development, it's expanding tourism, and growing the tax base of one of New Hampshire's most challenged former mill towns. Through our community progress indicators, which we'll hear more about, we really track what the data says about what's happening in a community, and we see some real growth and strength of the economy in Franklin. The end result of CDFA's investment ecosystem is to lift up those who are most in need, building strong, vibrant communities. We make investments that create and strengthen a community's sense of place. We do this through integrated, holistic community economic development investments. A great example is here the city of Laconia. Over the past decade, CDFA has made significant investments to help this community meet basic human needs, build local capacity and resiliency, and advance economic success. A few examples of our investments in Laconia are shown on these slides and include facility improvements for the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire. They expanded their services, and that's kids at the Boys and Girls Club there in the middle. Assisting the Lakes Region Mental Health Center in consolidating its facilities into one centralized location, improving access to their mental health services and meeting the growing demand for those services. Revitalizing two cornerstone downtown arts and culture venues like the Colonial Theater in Bethlehem, and the Bethlehem Mill. The Belknap Mill, which is the top right corner of the picture. Finally, providing technical assistance grants and capacity support to the Belknap Economic Development Corporation to boost their capacity to reach out to small businesses located amongst these incredible downtown institutions. These investments support critical human safety net services, create new opportunities for area residents, and build a healthy and vibrant community. We're very pleased to work with partners to make these incredible investments. Before we move on and focus really in on those tax credit resources, we wanted to see if you had any questions about CDFA and our various priorities. So I'll just pause and see if Melissa's identified any questions.
Thanks, Katie. No current questions at this time, but just a good reminder that folks should take a moment and drop those questions that they have into the Q&A box. So we will be pausing throughout to answer. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. I now have the opportunity to introduce Betsy McNamara of Full Circle Consulting, who's working with CDFA this year to help manage the tax credit program. We're so lucky to have Betsy. She's a seasoned fundraising consultant who has raised tens of millions of dollars for nonprofits throughout Northern New England. Betsy estimates that she's written prior to her work with CDFA directly. She wrote 14 tax credit applications. And so we're really happy to glean that knowledge from the applicant's perspective and continue to make improvements to this great program. Betsy will start us off by explaining how the tax credit program works. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, Katie. And welcome, everybody. Yes, it's nice for me to have the experience of working with CDFA to see how much work they put into the process of reviewing and making decisions about who gets awards, and then the support CDFA provides throughout the life of the tax credit award in relationship with the organization that receives the awards. I see from the list there are some very seasoned fundraising professionals on here, and then I know that a lot of you are new to the tax credit program. So I will be talking with you first about how the tax credits work, and then I'll go through the application section by section to provide you with as much information as possible before you actually start your application. So about the tax credits, the tax credit program is CDFA's longest serving program, established by the New Hampshire legislature in 1999. It's a unique program. There actually aren't that many other states that have one like this, that awards about $5 million a year in tax credits to eligible nonprofits and municipalities. The range of the awards is around $40,000 to $1 million, but both of those are outliers. The average award size is $315,000 over 2 years. And when you're considering how much to raise, the advice is always, we want you to apply for what you really need, you realistically need for your project, and also what you can realistically raise in terms of securing the pledges for the tax credits. It's a competitive program. CDFA typically receives 2 times the amount of requests than we have funds to award. And but for 25 years now, this program is a proven example of how to achieve local priorities by leveraging public-private partnerships. The tax credit awards do, of course, come with some conditions that are secured by a contract, but compared to other federal or state funding programs, this is a program with much less red tape than a typical state or federal grant award. So how do the tax credits work? This is the tax credit award. Let me just say at the outset, it's different than a foundation application, of course. In that typical relationship between a funder and a grantee, you apply, you receive a yes or no. If you receive a yes, you get the check. It's different with tax credits. A tax credit award comes in the form of New Hampshire state tax credit equity, typically over a 2-year period. So for the businesses who pay New Hampshire state taxes support awarded projects by purchasing the awardee's credits. As a result, the organization, that would be you, the applicant, receives a cash award thanks to the business, and the business receives a 75% New Hampshire state tax credit for their contribution, realizing a true public-private partnership. The donating business may apply the tax credit to the business profits tax, the business enterprise tax, or the insurance premium tax, and the business has up to 5 years to take the credit. In addition, a portion of the donation, the 25% they don't get the tax credit for, may be eligible as a state and federal charitable contribution. A portion of each tax credit award, 20% of each award, supports the administration of the CDFA tax credit program, as well as additional statewide investments, technical assistance, data collection, research, and operations. CDFA does not receive funding from the general fund for the tax credit program. When you apply, you don't have to worry about that 20% because the grant management system will automatically calculate your request, incorporating this percentage into the total funding request. So for example, if your project needs $100,000 for implementation, the total tax credit request would be calculated for $125,000. Most of our awardees are nonprofits, so this would mean that instead of asking a business for a direct cash contribution as you would with a traditional campaign, you will ask the business to purchase the tax credits that are allocated to your nonprofit. The types of businesses that participate in this program are basically any business. Typically, they're banks and manufacturers and retail and insurance brokers, but any organization that pays business profits tax, business enterprise tax, or insurance premium tax is eligible to participate in the tax credit program as a donor. So how does the, let's see, how does the tax credits work? This is a graph that we use. There are 5 steps to the process, and step 5 is when you receive the funds. So step 1, CDFA has awarded you your tax credit allocations. Step 2, you'll secure pledges from New Hampshire businesses. Step 3, the business pays the donation to CDFA. Step 4, CDFA provides the business with the tax credit letter documenting the donation, and then they can take they can deduct the 75% of their pledge off their state taxes. And step 5, funds for the projects are available to be released to you when you've completed your fundraising. I just want to note that some of you are interested in the capacity building tax credit program. And in this program, CDFA may secure the first year of tax credit pledges on your behalf. So when you are thinking about promoting if you get a tax credit award, when you're thinking about promoting it to businesses, just know that it's a very good deal for businesses, and businesses are, once they learn about it, are quite enthusiastic about it. So here's an example of the tax savings impact to a business donor. This is an example. All potential donors should discuss their specific tax savings and implications with a professional tax advisor. So pretend it's a $10,000 donation. The business will receive 75% of the donation back as a tax credit, which you see on the second line of the table. Additional deductions to the business profits tax for the remainder of the donation, for example, $750, is calculated in line 3, and this brings the total tax savings to $8,250. The original contribution was for $10,000, but the actual net cost to this donor is less than $1,750, so less than 18 cents on the dollar. Additionally, the business could receive federal income tax savings for a certain amount of the deduction. But the biggest selling point for the tax credits is that a business purchases tax credits, meaning that they are reallocating their state tax dollars to invest directly into projects that benefit the communities they serve. Again, this is a really attractive program for business donors and a great way to expand your relationship with businesses. So we're going to move now into an overview of the tax credit program and then the capacity building tax credit program. But before we do, Melissa, any questions?
We do have a couple of questions, and folks are dropping them in the chat, and we do appreciate those thoughtful questions. And just to make sure we don't miss any moving forward, if it's possible to put them in the Q&A box, it's just a little bit easier to monitor them there to make sure we don't miss anything. There's an eligibility question, which you might cover in the next couple of slides. There's also a question around how much time is allotted to raise the funds, Betsy, which I believe you might cover a little bit in a few slides, but if you want to address that here, if possible.
Sure. How much time you're allotted to raise the funds? So if the award is made, we follow the state fiscal year. So these tax credits to which you are considering applying, if you receive them, the tax credit award begins July 1st, 2026. And you have until March 31st, 2027 to secure pledges for the first year. And then that clock starts over for the second year.
Great. And you covered this, but just emphasizing what types of business sectors benefit the most from the tax credits. And I think it's fair to say any business with tax liability in New Hampshire.
Any business with tax liability in New Hampshire. I don't know that there are particular sectors that are most interested. I know that we've had awards, as small as a few hundred, or pledges, I should say, as small as a few $100s and as much as hundreds of thousands of dollars from a single business. Those are both outliers. So typically, I think the typical award is in the $20,000 range. I can't remember actually, but
Yeah.
10 to
The more
20,000.
moderate band is where we see the most.
The more moderate band is where we see the most. That's exactly right.
Yep. And then a question about whether there's a list of businesses that have purchased in the past available. And I would say our annual reports are the place to look for any previous business donors as we list out each donor every fiscal year there. And as we've been answering some questions, we've had a couple pop up as well. One is asking, what is your answer to those businesses who say that it is not dollar to dollar and they don't have budgeted for the 17.5 additional donation?
I I don't know how you can get a better deal. It's hard to get a better deal than 75%, 17.5 cents on the dollar for your giving. Some larger businesses might participate in something called the new market tax credits or some other thing that is dollar to dollar tax credits, but it's really hard to participate in those. And this is a terrific opportunity for businesses to fund community-based projects that have a wide range of approaches throughout the state to support community economic development. So I don't know, as a seasoned fundraiser, I would move on to the next prospective donor.
I think it's fair to say too that most community-minded businesses see this program as a way to further leverage that investment that they would already be making into their community. So it's those businesses that are already really committed to investing in these types of projects or in nonprofits that are going to find the most value because they're going to be able to leverage that donation even further.
Yeah.
And then a question about if you have tax credits still allocated to you at that March deadline, is it possible to get an extension? And I just maybe we'll note that we help you throughout the entire process. So there shouldn't be any surprises as far as your fundraising progress, and would be happy to work with you through any challenges. But Betsy, what would you
That's
mention
basically
here?
exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Then we just had, let me just make sure I'm reading this correctly. Step 2, states pledges are secured. I was under the impression that non-binding LOIs needed to be provided as part of the application. Oh, letters of interest need to be provided as part of the application. If a business has already participated and are still in their 5-year window of tax eligibility, are they eligible to contribute to the CDFA tax credit program again? So 2 different questions. One about letters of interest, and then the second about business participation.
Letters. So we're going to get into this in the application workshop on Thursday, but the letters of interest to pledge for tax credit purchase are not required for your application, but they certainly support your application. So you do not need to secure pledges for your tax credit award prior to the deadline. That's for sure. But if you have businesses that are interested, and this does happen as you're out talking with businesses in the community, I've had examples where a business will say, hey, we're not in a position to make that level of cash gift, but if you secure a tax credit award, come back to us and we'll be able to do so. So that's the kind of letter of intent or letter of interest. Yes, and the second question, if a business has already participated and are still in their 5-year window of tax eligibility, yes, they are definitely eligible to contribute to the CDFA tax credit program again. The limiting factor for a business is their tax liability. And so if their tax liability, they usually have a sense of what it's going to be. I will say that businesses don't typically like to go the 5 years because they like to implement to reap the savings, the tax credit savings in the year they make the pledge. From Denise, can you advertise your fundraising in a newspaper? We are doing a lot of work to promote this opportunity, the tax opportunity for businesses to support projects through the tax credit program. We're doing a lot of work to raise awareness about this. And you're right, Denise, it's businesses are much more comfortable and excited about the program because they know about it and have experience with it. in the southern part of the state. And so we do some work trying to raise awareness with businesses, including advertising. Yeah.
All right, excellent. So that's the questions that I'm seeing right now, Betsy, if we want to move into a little bit more about the tax credit program.
Sure. So we have CDFA offers two different kinds of awards within the tax credit program. Each has its own application and program guide, and you will decide which one to apply for based on the needs of your organization and project. So we have the capacity building program, and Molly Donovan is going to come on and talk about that later. That total allocation available for that program is $750,000, and this is really focused on an organization that is not doing a capital project, but instead they're really doing some level of building organizational capacity. And as I said, Molly will go into that. The tax credit program, the total allocation available is a little over 4.25 million. And by capital projects, we mean major renovation or construction of facilities. So this tends to be a facilities program for you. Eligible applicants are listed on this slide. Most of the applicants we receive are nonprofit organizations involved in community development, and to a lesser extent, we do receive applications from municipalities. If you are a nonprofit with a fiscal sponsor, we have guidance on our resource hub. And if you have questions as to which of these types of organizations your project falls under, please review the application and program guide for both and ask the question in your pre-app meeting, which we're going to talk about later. We ask that you, before you apply, you schedule a pre-app meeting with somebody from the CDFA team. Program objectives. In accordance with New Hampshire RSA 162L, which is CDFA's founding legislation, tax credit funds are allocated to specific projects or programs that are of public benefit for a public purpose and can reasonably be expected to address one or more of the following objectives: that they contribute to the development and economic well-being of a target area or population, they contribute to the economic development of the state, they increase or maintain threatened primary employment, or they provide affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income people. The applications that focus on these activities are prioritized. They are projects that focus on place-based strategies that reinvest in priority populations and priority areas. There are projects that encourage the development of effective and durable collaborations among multiple organizations to fundamentally impact communities and strengthen local economies. And projects that use funding from multiple sources, including but not limited to banks, private donations, capital campaigns, or other government funding sources, and or other CDFA grants or loan funds. We do talk a lot about priority populations and priority areas in our application and program guides. And these are our definitions of each listed on here. Your project may have a positive community economic development impact on a priority population as described in the definition. And I will say that these definitions are backed up by data, which is one of the reasons why we emphasize use of data in your application so much. And in the tax credit application webinar on Thursday, we're going to talk to you about CDFA's data resources and how you can use them. But the point is, you can either define the priority population or priority area as one of these that fits in the definitions listed here, or you can define your own. But if you do define your own, you'll want to cite supporting data. CDFA's community progress indicators, which are detailed data that supports the identification of priority populations and priority communities, are available on CDFA's data page on its website. So given how competitive the tax program is, while not expressly disallowed, these are activities that might not be given priority when compared to the other applications in the round. And these are clearly listed in the application and program guide. So operating expenses, deficit reduction, or expenses already incurred. Although I will say, for expenses already incurred, if you have started your project and it is reasonable to say, for example, you're going to start construction or renovation of a building in June and the award isn't announced until June, it's perfectly reasonable to include those expenses in your project budget, looking back. But if they were incurred, say, 4 years ago, no. And you can certainly ask more about that when you have a pre-app meeting. We don't requests that are typically the responsibility of federal, state, or municipal funding sources are not generally prioritized. Municipal projects that don't demonstrate a significant level of private enterprise, which is defined by a project that shows planned economic benefit. We don't typically prioritize the replacement of typical revenue sources, contributions, grants, or earned income. We don't typically prioritize organizations that possess the financial capacity to complete a proposed project without a tax credit investment, or capital campaign activities not explicitly tied to a specific project or programs. If you have an active CDFA tax credit project right now, you're not likely to be prioritized. Requests for a large sum of funds compared to other projects in the same round, and or available tax credit resources, and projects whose primary beneficiaries are not New Hampshire residents or individuals, or whose primary activities are located outside of New Hampshire or would benefit communities outside of New Hampshire. So hopefully that gives you some of the guardrails of what our focus area is. I'm going to talk now about readiness. This can be hard to figure out if it's too early in your project development or too late. So we're going to go a little bit into readiness and what CDFA looks for in a project when considering all of its applications. Most tax credit applications to CDFA demonstrate public benefit and public purpose. About 50% tick off all aspects of readiness. And so CDFA looks at readiness components as a framework. And so we'll go into a bit of detail on each now. The first aspect of readiness that we look for is community engagement and support. And so this really is talking about how have you brought people into the process to shape the outcome? When the engagement, when you can demonstrate that the engagement prioritized a variety of styles of engagement so that underrepresented voices are heard, that is more of a priority for us. When was the project informed by the people it is intended to serve? How did you engage folks to get their input? Did you make the process accessible? For example, for a project intended to serve families with young children, were your meetings during the workday or in the early evening with childcare provided? Does the project have the support of the community? And if so, how can you demonstrate community support? Does it align with already established community priorities as evidenced by something such as a community master plan? And I just want to say that CDFA as an organization is very committed itself to community engagement and connecting with partners. And so we do ask those who partner with CDFA to also prioritize community engagement. Another aspect of readiness is a proven need. So does the project contribute to the development or redevelopment and economic well-being of a priority area or priority population? As defined a couple slides ago, those priority definitions are also in the application and program guide. Does the project contribute to the economic development of the state? Does the project increase or maintain threatened primary employment? And does the project provide affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income people? We do ask for quantifiable outcome measurements for the project. So example, how many units of affordable housing, how many jobs preserved or created? We also ask that you demonstrate that CDFA tax credit funds are necessary to complete the project. Tax credits have been as little as 2% of a project's total funding and as much as 80%, but there is always other funding involved. We also look at the readiness of the project. And this is honestly can be the hardest to quantify for both you as the applicant and CDFA as the reviewer. If the project receives, what we want to know is if the project receives a tax credit award, does your organization have the capacity, leadership, and resources to carry out the project, conduct a tax credit sales campaign, and sustain the project going forward? So the evaluators are looking for the confidence that you can do all of those things. Another aspect of readiness is compliance with CDFA's energy policy. We ask that you meet CDFA's required energy policy that apply, and this applies to any project that is proposing a physical alteration to existing energy systems or for new construction. So CDFA's energy policy aims to support projects in reducing future operating costs, improving occupant comfort and health, and enhancing the durability of facilities. We'll go into much more detail about CDFA's energy policy and how applicants can participate in that on Thursday's tax credit application webinar. Another aspect of readiness is networks with the business community. So this is the final demonstration of readiness that we look for. We would like to know that your organization has the ability and the networks to secure the pledges and donations required to receive it, to secure your funding from your tax credit award. This is because once the tax credits are pledged and then donations are in, that is the time when the organization receives the funding, not before. So we want to be sure that you do have the ability to actually reach out to all those businesses and secure those pledges. Very often, this process is part of a structured capital campaign. So does your organization have the business networks and the capacity to carry out such a campaign? CDFA receives applications demonstrating many different levels of readiness and public benefit. Yours will be most competitive if you can demonstrate both high public benefit and public purpose and a high level of readiness. We're going to check in with Melissa now about any questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Molly Donovan, CDFA's Director of Community Economic Development, to talk about the capacity building tax credit program.
Thanks, Betsy. So just noting that there's a question about it's a little bit specific to a project, but I think it would probably be helpful for folks in terms of timing for applications. If our project is in the leadership fundraising phase with good progress being made, but construction isn't slated to begin until spring of 2027 and completed late summer 2028, would it behoove us to postpone this application until March 27 round, or can we apply this year even though construction won't be underway for a year? It's a specific project question, but it gives, I'm sure a lot of people are kind of wrangling with a timing.
It gives, yeah. I always describe the readiness part as almost threading a needle. And so I think that in this very specific example, it's fine, in my opinion. Melissa, jump in. It's fine that construction is not slated to start until 2027. I think CDFA would look for assurance that you are well on your way in the capital campaign and have at least a good idea of the other funding, if not some commitments, if you need other sources of grant funding or state funding or something. And then finally, we would want to know that you have the capacity to add this level of campaign to your capital campaign.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair because it's the combination of when construction might be taking place, but also that your project is in a position to be successful.
That's right. And let me just add one. Typically, CDFA looks to have a capital campaign, especially if it's solely funded by a capital campaign, be at about 60% of goal for the when you apply. Now you can certainly, let us know for March and April as gifts come in to update. But after April 30th, we're sort of locked into our review, and that's the information we'll take. Definitely a question to bring up one-on-one in the pre-app meeting as well.
Yep, absolutely. There's a question about a registration link for Thursday's webinar, and we'll share that. And just noting that that application webinar is focused specifically on the tax credit program, where Betsy and the team are going to walk through all the components of the application and how to think about being successful there. And then there will be a separate capacity building application webinar next week. We'll share links to register for both of those in the chat momentarily. There's a question about what is the average amount of time needed to fundraise for $300,000 in tax credits?
Such a good question. It
Depends.
gets to that capacity, right? It totally depends. So I would say that if a project is awarded 300, let's say this may not be exactly true, but let's say it's split 50-50. So you have 150,000 to raise in year one and 150,000 to secure in year two. You have those, what is that, 9 months from July through March 31st to secure those pledges. And then the business gets to decide when it makes the gift. They might actually write the check in September or December, or they could wait until June 30, 2027 to actually write the check. So you have 9 months. I've seen some projects where one of their board members picks up the phone and sells them all in an afternoon. And I've seen some that go all the way to the wire, including ones I've worked on. So all the way to March 31st. So it really depends on the strength of your business networks and honestly, the business community in your region. And we understand that some regions, it's harder to secure tax credit pledges than others. And so we do account for that and understand that. CDFA is committed to making investments throughout the entire state. So just because a part of the state doesn't have as strong a business community as others, that does not impact our scoring. Not that we score, does not impact our review.
Yeah. Does the nonprofit have to be the owner of the space, or could it be privately owned space for public benefit use?
The nonprofit, I might need to lean on somebody else for this, but my understanding is the nonprofit needs to be the owner, or the nonprofit should be the primary user of the space, providing the programs.
Or have a long-term lease secured.
Right.
Because, and we'll talk about this more in the application workshop, but there's a performance lien that gets put
That's
on
right.
any piece of infrastructure or project that's created using tax credits to secure this public investment. And so that performance lien is for 10 years. And so we would look for a long-term lease agreement that would make sure that that space is going to be utilized for the intended purposes that it's being rehabilitated or fit up for at least that 10-year period.
Sure. There are lots of nonprofits that have long-term leases on their space that have received tax credits to fit up or renovate that space. So that's not a barrier, but the program has to be delivered in that space, and the site control needs to be, yeah,
an MOU or something of that
right.
nature in your application to confirm that there's a relationship or an understanding between the nonprofit and the owner of the space.
That's right.
To be used. Excellent.
Right.
That's all I'm seeing right now.
Okay, so now we will turn it over to Molly Donovan to talk about the capacity building tax credit program. Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Betsy and Melissa. Nice to be here with you today. I am going to talk a little bit about the capacity building program, and I'll start with why capacity building in the tax credit program. We have a nice quote from Katie here, and I'll let you take a look at that. But we recognize that it's foundational to the community economic development work that we do at CDFA, that we have strong organizations leading and doing the work. And so we invest in their capacity to do that work. We focus on meeting the needs, as Betsy said earlier, on priority populations and communities with high need and limited investment. We are working to build the capacity of nonprofits, municipalities, coalitions, and emerging or new organizations. We do a lot of that work in the collaboration coalition space, and I'll talk about that a little further. So what is capacity building? How do we define it? We see capacity building as the strengthening or building of skills, abilities, and processes that nonprofit organizations need to have in order to thrive, be resilient, and be sustainable. And so while this is typically a one-time investment, what we're really hoping to do is allow this investment to help your organization grow and sustain over time. And we hope that you can, and the point is that you will be able to fulfill your mission. And we're looking to ensure that your mission helps to strengthen economy and community. So as Betsy said, the capacity building program is a subset of the tax credit program. It is the tax credit program. It differentiates from the tax credits, as I said, because it's really looking to strengthen the organization. Where the tax credit program that Betsy was describing is really focused on bricks and mortar and community place work and buildings and facilities. This is really focused on organizations, and we do primarily have nonprofit organizations apply for this funding. What we have found is the benefited tax credits to nonprofit organizations, especially to new or emerging organizations or nonprofits that are in an early stage of development, is we do provide training and it gives you experience on doing major donor fundraising, which is something many of the smaller or newer nonprofits in the state don't have experience with. So we do provide training and support for you to do that, to sell your tax credits. Our hope is that this builds a lasting relationship between you and the businesses in your community or region. And I should say beyond hope, we, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been able to demonstrate that's exactly what's happening. And so if you are awarded a tax credit, and you solicit businesses and are successful and will be successful in that effort, then you should continue to go to those businesses for support long after the tax credit program is over. Some of our nonprofits are unsure that they have connections in the business community in order to develop a good list of who to solicit. We can help you with that by taking a look at with you, looking at your board and your neighborhood and your program and your vendors. And there's all sorts of ways you're engaged with businesses already. It's just a matter of really formalizing that and working on how you might do that ask. The other nice thing about the capacity building program is because it's a smaller program, we tend to fund under 10 organizations a year, and we keep those organizations connected to each other and to us. You saw Kirsten Barton introduce herself early on. She works hand in hand with our awardees in the 2 years they're in the program, and does a really nice job of connecting them with other nonprofits where there might be potential for some synergy or networking or collaboration. So you become part of a group of folks, and we're seeing that it's really helping to strengthen nonprofits to have that. It also keeps you connected with CDFA. One of our goals is to help you through your life cycle of your organization. And so if you move from capacity building to renovating a space or opening a new space or a new facility, then we're hoping that we'll be able to fund and finance for that for you as well. So similar guidelines here as in the tax credit program. Applications are due March 6th at 4 p.m. You do apply through the grants management system, and we have a lot of great support if you're new to that effort. You are eligible for up to $150,000 over 2 years. You do not need to apply for the full amount, but you're welcome to do so. Typically, we're finding that is generally split 75,000 a year. And also to share that we still have grant writing assistance available. We're in our final round of that. And so our last due date is Friday, January 16th. So yes, this Friday, but we have a pretty simple application and some really good support on our staff. So if you're interested in trying to secure grant writing assistance, please reach out as soon as possible on that. And everything I'm going to talk about going forward and that I've said in the last few slides, of course, are in our application and guide. And I know Melissa will put that in the chat for you all to access. So the funding priorities under capacity building. These are the 4 priorities we've had for the last several years. And I just want to go through these with you. So no matter what topic area you're working on as an organization, we're looking to prioritize initiatives or capacity that falls into one of these 4 areas. And these are not ranked in the order that we have here on the slide. They're just presented. We're always looking for collaboration, network, partnerships, and strategic alliances. We recognize, especially this year, it's been a very difficult year for nonprofits in the state and nationally. We recognize there have been funding loss at federal and some state funding, and some organizations are looking at, how they're going to fulfill their mission going forward. One piece of a strategy along those lines is to look at collaborations and partnerships, and particularly strategic alliances, to help build a number of organizations. And so I won't go through the definition of each one of those. They're all pretty similar. It's the idea that you're working alongside another nonprofit. In a strategic alliance, you're really deciding you're going to collaborate and share resources. Sometimes you're going to share a staff or space or joint programming. And then I would just say that collaboration and partnerships are kind of a lighter view of that. So if you've got a project that falls under this, we're interested to hear about that. If you'd also like to explore this with some other organizations as a way to strengthen your capacity, please come and talk to us in the pre-application about that. We recognize that moving into a collaboration is a whole body of work unto itself, and that you would need support for that. Second are place-based strategies, excuse me, that support priority populations and revitalize communities. So place-based strategies, I think both Katie and Betsy referenced this, but we're particularly interested in looking at how does your program or your initiative improve downtown, Main Street, Village Center, neighborhood? What is the impact on the physical surroundings and the economy in terms of the work that you're doing? So please consider place when you're thinking about the work that you're doing or the population you're serving, and do your best to address that. One of the things I love about this program is that we're always looking for innovative models of governance, organizations, or initiatives. So if you have an idea that seems maybe a little off the wall or hasn't been funded elsewhere, but is innovative because it's backed up in data or experiences you're having, or other organizations in other states that have been successful, come and talk to us, because we are very interested, and I feel fortunate in this program that we can look to try new and different things, and innovative new ways to do things, so we can look at some new solutions in our community. So innovation is important. And then finally, but not last, is community engagement. Any effort to bring community and community voices, particularly of those who have been historically underserved, into an effort to better serve a community is a priority for us as well. What we fund, I want to also share, it's really how can the funding be used. There's a lot of different ways. Sometimes you may need a consultant to help you walk through the work you're doing. You may need to train your staff or bring on an additional staff person. You might be moving from an all-volunteer organization to first-time staff member. So there's all different ways that we can fund capacity building, and the conversations together will help further define that. I also finally want to say that we do prioritize the applications based on what we talked about earlier, projects or collaborations that are building the capacity of priority populations and priority places. As we all know, there are critical needs across the state, and some rise to the top in terms of their severity right now. And so some of the critical needs that we've been funding and that we're interested in supporting are housing needs, specifically for our most vulnerable populations. We'd like to advance sustainability models in the childcare sector. So if you're doing work in that sector, you would qualify under this program. And then again, engaging community voice to drive the local solutions and supports. Keep in mind, these are not the only areas we fund. We just recognize these are critical issues that many of us across the state are trying to address. And whether you fit into one of these critical areas or an additional area, you should still reflect back in the app and guide and really think about, is this a collaboration, innovation, place-based work, and community engagement? So those pieces are definitely married together. If the topic that you're working on isn't reflected here in the critical needs, that's okay. This is where you tell us your story, you back that up with data, and tell us why and the need is out there and how you'd like to address that need. So some examples just in the past year on these critical areas. Last year, a little to our surprise, we had a number of applications that were related to housing, but actually had nothing to do with the direct building of housing. Here, our grantees from last year in housing are listed, and they all have a different initiative in housing. Habitat for Humanity, a longstanding organization in Nashua, is working on a new program, a new initiative to rehab houses because they see that as a need in their community. Then we've got a municipal initiative out of Concord to work in partnership with efforts on homelessness in the city of Concord. We've got Home Possible project that is working on home for adults with disabilities. And the Eastern Monadnock Housing Security Coalition is a group of faith-based groups trying to get connected into those working in housing in their region. So when we say housing is a priority, again, it's not necessarily in this side of the program. We would not fund actual housing project. We might fund that in the tax credit program, but we're certainly interested in these initiatives. And I would say what many of these have in common is that they're innovative. And they do a really strong work at engaging the community in the work that they're doing. Each application was worthy on its own, but together we see that there's that we're able to make a larger impact. The next slide, thank you, Melissa, is the Coos County Directors Network. This is an initiative out of the North Country, Coos County, and this is an example of what I would call a strategic alliance. They did not necessarily call that in the application, and that's fine. But this is an effort where one nonprofit who's been working in the childcare sector for quite some time came forward with a model that they've seen in other parts of the country of having one nonprofit organization serve as the management and backroom operations of several childcare centers and initiatives, so the childcare organizations could focus on their time and energy with the kids that they're taking care of. And the goal here is to increase the number of childcare slots, high quality centers, and the pay for staff, because the childcare centers themselves are going to be saving money by having a central nonprofit organization take on these back office operations. So that falls under innovative, it falls under collaborative. And because there's so many organizations involved, they're definitely engaging in their community on this topic. We also like this project because it's potentially can be replicated in other parts of the state. So under that category of innovation, we're always looking for projects that may work well in your region or your community or neighborhood, but with some success, we might share in other parts of the state as solutions to the problems that we're facing. There's some trends that we have found in our grant making over the last several years that I wanted to share with you. I think many of you know that nonprofits go through several stages of organizational development over time. What we're finding is that we're typically funding organizations that are in an earlier stage of development. You do not need to be a 501c3. As Betsy mentioned, there's guidance on a fiscal sponsorship in the application and guide, and we'll also share more about fiscal sponsorships at our session on the 20th on the application for capacity building. But we need to know you have enough capacity that you've thought through your mission, you have some body of support in your community, maybe you have board members and you've done outreach in your community. Many of the organizations we're working with are focused on a priority population. We are funding over the last 6 or 7 years a number of organizations that are moving from all volunteer to first staff. If you've ever been through that process, and actually I've been through that process, it is a process. There is work that is done on the board of directors side of that equation and on the staffing side of that. And it takes time to move through changing roles and responsibilities. And so we're interested in supporting your efforts there. We have good consultants in the state who will work with you on that type of organizational development. We also see lots of amazing visionary leaders that need operational capacity. So these leaders are out in the community, they're sharing what the issue is that they're working on, they're engaging the community, they're bringing people together, they're creating momentum to address this issue. And then they realize there's an organization that has to back this up in terms of sometimes it's payroll, sometimes it's creating HR policies, sometimes it's board policies. We're interested to support those visionary leaders as they move from just a vision on something that they want to work on to an actual organization. One quick success that I want to share with you is the Youth Success Project. This is a youth-led organization that is working with homeless youth in the state, primarily started in the Plymouth region, but goes beyond that. They were brand new when they came to us, and there's not a lot. They may be the only organization where youth-led working on youth homelessness. So they have a very particular point of view and set of programs that they wanted to develop. They came in with a fiscal sponsor, and they're working to build the programs. We were again interested in this because this may be something they can grow through their region, through the state, or other organizations could learn from them and take on similar work. The next stage of nonprofit organizations that we are funding typically is organizations that are going through some kind of growth or change. We see organizations who want to do new outreach to priority populations. So a population they've never worked with, could be a population that's new to their community or one that newly needs to be served in their community, and they want to learn how to do that and have the tools in place to effectively engage priority populations. We also see applications and fund applications that are initiatives that are growing from a local, maybe a small initiative in a city or town or neighborhood that wants to move to regional or statewide. Again, that's a whole process to take that on if you've been through that before. And we do see quite a bit of those. And then we see long-standing organizations that are ready to move on to brand new work that doesn't typically fall under their mission. One example of that is the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, as you can see here. So many of you may know the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. They've been around for many, many years, very successful at historic preservation across the state and saving, beautiful buildings and architecture and communities and downtowns. They did a study and recognized through their experience that their skilled tradespeople were aging and looking to retire. And so it's a real concern and a real question who will do the actual work on buildings, fix the windows, do the roofing, work on the specialty needs of construction and historic preservation. And so after their study, they came to us and said, the study clearly says we have got to build a pipeline and do some workforce development. And we are not a workforce organization. This is very new and different to us. And so here's a case, longstanding organization who's identified a need that helps continue their mission far out into the future. And we were able to fund them. You can see here, we've got like lots of high school and some college kids who are going through training. I think they're in their second year of training right now to learn the trades in the hope that they'll build up that workforce for the historic preservation sector. So that's an example of a long-standing organization that's really trying something out of their wheelhouse, and they've been really successful. So if you've got an idea like that, please come and talk to us. And then finally, I want to talk about projects that have links with infrastructure projects or bricks and mortar projects. We often are interested in funding capacity building for nonprofits who someday hope to have a facility or a presence in their downtown or program space. They're not there yet, but that's part of their long-term goal. And so we're very interested in that. We want to build your capacity to get to that point to need space or to move into your downtown and help create more vibrancy downtown and help fund that physical infrastructure in your community. And then occasionally we've already funded a facility and they find there's an opportunity for newer, different programming because of the space. One example of that is 100 Nights in Keene. We worked in the tax credit program to fund their new facility. And then the community realized, wow, they have this great new facility. Here are some ideas we have for using that. And 100 Nights came to us with some ideas on how to expand programming in this new facility, and we were able to fund that. Another example is Franklin, which was shared earlier by Katie. As Katie highlighted, it's been about 10 years of investment in the city of Franklin, and particularly their downtown and their housing. When their city hall and their opera house was in dire shape and needed renovation, some of their community members were weary. It has been, 10 years of change and investment in their town. And so Franklin came to us just to engage their community. They wanted to bring in a consultant, which they were able to do, to hold conversations across the community, do focus groups, meet one-on-one with the business sector and with renters and homeowners. They wanted to better connect with the schools and the parents so they could talk about the importance of their anchor institutions, City Hall and the Opera House, and why that needed to be funded and renovated. And they were really successful in that effort. It was over a year-long effort. It's just conversations. We're interested in any effort that connects community engagement with the built environment. And then my last example to share with you today is 1269 Cafe. This is an organization in Manchester, New Hampshire. They have just finished renovating a school. I love looking at this picture because the beautiful woodwork and what you can't see which is on the other side of the wall. They've kept some of the chalkboards up, and there's a real recognition that this was a important school in the community that is now used to address homelessness, and they have volunteers make these beautiful quilts for them. They again were investing in this building and realized they were an all-volunteer organization, two visionary leaders who've carried these ideas for years, and that they needed support, that they needed to build their organization, they needed to build their capacity to sustain this work over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so they were funded by us to bring in a consultant to work with them, to bring in an executive director, learn how to do the fundraising, and work on this long-term sustainability plan. So that's an example of a capacity project linked to an infrastructure project. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Melissa?
Hi, Molly. I'm seeing one at this time. Just looking into what the average capacity building grant is.
That's a good question. They typically net out to about $120,000, so $60,000 a year over 2 years. We have had organizations take a 1-year grant, so you can do that as well. Yeah, and as Betsy said earlier, I should also mention that we may assist you with your first year of fundraising. It depends on your application. But I would say on the whole, we provide training and support throughout in terms of selling the tax credits.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time.
All right, thanks. Hope to see folks next Tuesday, same time, same. People should register, and we'll go through the application piece by piece, and also share more information how you can connect with us on a pre-application.
Great. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Melissa. So we're going to talk now about what it's like to work with CDFA as you go through the application process and beyond. CDFA offers a number of ways to support our community partners well beyond the deployment of resources. CDFA is dedicated to ensuring the long-term success of the organizations we support by providing ongoing technical assistance, assisting with network building and asset management, compliance, as well as analyzing data and outcomes. So starting with technical assistance across all programs, we offer technical assistance, advice, application guidance, compliance support, and connections to other funders. CDFA is really committed to working closely with its partners to find creative solutions and offer guidance on project development, strategy and planning, implementation and finance, and advice on other topics related to community economic development efforts. In terms of network building, any successful community economic development effort requires a broad strategy to secure investments that revolve around the people living and working in our communities. And so supporting these strategies requires comprehensive community-based networks, and CDFA is focused on helping partners make meaningful connections that build collaboration and capacity while maximizing impact and unlocking the potential within our communities. In terms of ongoing project management, CDFA provides support as projects both market and fundraise the tax credits, and while you're utilizing the funding. For data outcome and analysis, CDFA collects data on the projects to use in support of your application. You'll hear a lot more about that on Thursday in the application overview. We actually require that projects use the data to strengthen your case for support, to demonstrating that your project has strong public benefit and public purpose. And then in terms of identifying outcomes, that is part of the application. We do ask that you propose outcome measures that are both realistic and measurable. And we support you in the creation of those outcomes. In terms of Some other very specific ways that we support, we work closely with potential applicants through the application phase. And one of the ways that we can best help you hone your application to show your project so that it's as competitive as it can be in this round is that we do urge you to register for a pre-application meeting. This is an opportunity to meet with somebody from the CDFA team, sharing instructions on how to request, sharing instructions on how to make the application. You will receive information on how to set up that pre-app meeting in the follow-up email to this webinar and to both either the tax credit application webinar on Thursday or the capacity building tax credit application webinar next Tuesday. So you will receive links in your follow-up emails. Please also be sure to look at CDFA's resource hub that's on its website. It provides a lot of access to program-related information and resources for our partners. It's an easy to navigate online platform that guides partners through the application and implementation phases of all CDFA's programs. And then we do offer ongoing technical assistance from concept initiation through project implementation. As Molly mentioned earlier, there are some grant writing assistance awards. This program is designed to help smaller organizations with limited capacity or experience to obtain the assistance of a professional grant writer who can help develop a strong and viable CDFA tax credit or capacity building program application. The applicants, you can apply for up to $3,000 to hire a grant writer should you need additional capacity, language access, or other technical support to successfully submit an application. These applications have been open since October 31st, and we've been awarding them in 3 different phases. The deadline for the third and final phase is this Friday, the 16th, and you will be notified of the award on January 30th. I know that as of a few days ago, we had 2 of the 6 awards left. So I encourage you to apply. There is funding available. And there will be a link to the Grant Writing Assistance Award application and program overview in your follow-up email. And it can also be found in the app and program guide. It's a simple application. So we don't make it, we make it accessible. The application timeline, this gives you a sense of what's happening between now and notification of the award. So the application is available in the Grants Management System, or GMS. It's available now, and a PDF of the application and guidelines is also available now. The link to all of that will be in the follow-up email from this webinar. You'll receive the instructions, as I mentioned before, on how to set up the pre-app meeting and if you set up a pre-app meeting, we just do ask that you have reviewed the app and program guidelines first. And after that, until the deadline, reach out as you have questions or need technical help with the grants management system. The application is due March 6th at 4 p.m. No exceptions for late or incomplete applications. And then CDFA conducts application review from between March and May, which includes an in-person site visit for the tax credit application and a virtual follow-up meeting with capacity building tax credit applicants. And then notifications of the award are announced the week of June 8th. So your very next steps are, the first, we really hope and encourage that you will attend the appropriate application writing webinar, either this Thursday for the tax credit program application or next Tuesday for the capacity building program application. The second step is that we ask that you sign up for grants for GMS. And then the third step is to please apply for a pre-application meeting. It's a great opportunity. I can't stress this enough. It's a great opportunity for you to talk about your program and your project and ask really specific questions that you have about the application and the guidelines with a member of the CDFA team. Meetings are going to take place January 21st through February 6th, and we've all set time aside in our calendars to make sure that we're available to you. And then finally, This slide, and again, these slides and a recording of this webinar will be sent to you following this after today and Thursday. This slide shows you how to register for the grants management system. For new users, the first step is to register at our website, newhampshirecdfagrants.org. We've created a detailed registration guide to help you through the process, and you'll find it linked on the site and here on this slide. And then please note that each new user registrant is reviewed and approved by CDFA staff, usually within 2 business days. For existing users, just simply use your current account credentials and log in. If you encounter any issues accessing your account, we do have a password recovery video on our site for easy instructions on how to reset your password and regain access. And then if you have any questions about registration or encounter any issues, please reach out to Mel Steenbeck for support, and her email is right on here. So that is the information we have. We are completely open to answering any questions that you may have, and certainly hope to see you at our application webinars.
Thanks, Betsy. I know we're coming up right on 11:30, which is when we promised to end by. So appreciate everybody staying with us and taking in all of this information. We've shared several links in the chat throughout the presentation, and as Betsy mentioned, we'll be rounding those up in a follow-up email that will also include a link to today's recording, slides, and the app and program guides. Pre-application meeting links will be sent out following the tax credit and capacity building application webinars. So look for that either later this week after you attend the tax credit application writing workshop, or following next week's capacity building application writing workshop. And with that, I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time. But again, appreciate everybody taking their mornings to spend with us. And ask really thoughtful questions, and looking forward to the potential of working with all of you as you advance an application to the tax credit program.